rolling. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Moss from Parker Dewey. Really excited for today's session. Couple of quick housekeeping notes. First of all, this will be recorded and we will be sharing the slides afterwards. So feel free to keep your eyes open for that. In addition, I'll be pretty good about trying to keep my eyes on the chat as we go through this. So if you see me looking at the other screen, it's to do just that. If you have questions along the way, again, feel free to use the chat and put them in there. I'll try to address them as we go through, and certainly we'll leave some time at the end. So for today's session, we're going to try to keep it to about 30 minutes. We're going to talk through a quick overview. We'll hit what is a micro-internship. We'll walk through some actionable strategies that you can apply right now. And in addition, we're going to talk a little bit about a program where you can essentially see how this works with no cost to you. It's pretty incredible, and it's through some very, very generous support of a number of different organizations. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. So again, with that, let's get rolling. So very quick background, Parker Dewey. Who are we? We have been around for almost a decade. We are 100% focused on helping organizations more effectively engage, assess, and ultimately hire college students and recent graduates for full-time roles, summer internships, and all of those wonderful things. We're not a staffing firm, we're not a job board, but very much a recruiting tool that complements what you are doing. The way we do this are through these concept of micro-internships, which we'll talk a little bit about as we go through these. These are short-term projects that you can use to, again, get interest from students, see their skills in action, and ultimately build the relationships that lead to or drive a competitive advantage in hiring candidates. And the data about the effectiveness is pretty incredible. The challenges. Look, we're all feeling them, especially right now. College students are saying that the recruiting process doesn't effectively let them demonstrate skills. It doesn't help them explore career paths. As a result, we're seeing close to 50% first-year turnover, according to National Association of Colleges and Employers, for individuals who are hired out of college. And again, college broadly defined to include 2-year, 4-year, master's programs, boot camps, workforce training programs, etc. We also see increasing pressure on campus recruiting teams and employers. Cost per hire continues to increase. And when you think about some of the attrition rates, it's becoming more painful. In addition, with everything going on right now, early career hiring programs are under attack, both within and outside of companies. How can we help recruiting teams have more data to demonstrate the effectiveness of their programs and continue to sort of drive this strategic direction? This is what we're doing. So imagine being able to start your campus recruiting season before you go to the career fair or the info session this fall, having candidates already engaged before you're setting foot on campus. Imagine being able to, when you are on campus, have meaningful discussions at the career fairs, at the info sessions, not just rehashing what's on the company's website or getting the resume and sort of the 30-second elevator pitch from a student, but actually being able to dive in to what some of those entry-level roles look like. Being able to keep candidates engaged after you're on site, whether it's the junior or senior, for that period between the career fair and info session and the formal campus recruiting process, the on-campus interviews or super days, or maybe it's a first or second year student who you're not offering summer internships or full-time roles to, but you want to keep them engaged because they're excited about your organization. Imagine before you do an interview, have real insights on if the student's interested and if they have their skills, being able to see these things earlier in the process before you invest the time. And in a way that doesn't rely on academic pedigree, where someone went to school, their GPA major, who their parents are. And being able to reach and engage students, even if you can't be on campus. We know, again, budgets are getting tight. We know campus recruiting teams can't be at every one of the schools across the US. This can help really reach those students maybe who are from your geography but attend school elsewhere, or aren't able to participate in on-campus events. This is not hypothetical. This is not a fairy tale. This is experiential recruiting. Experiential recruiting is really the intersection between two things, employer branding and skills-based hiring. This is what we're going to talk about today. And when we talk about employer branding, we're not talking about the swag that you're giving out at the career fair or just if students know your organization's name. We're talking about breaking through some of those misconceptions, helping that student who has heard of Nike, who has heard of Google, recognize the breadth of opportunities those companies offer. The one who's interested in data analytics or AI, but wasn't necessarily thinking about a role at United Airlines. Or the student who may not have heard of your brand. Again, you might be a Fortune 500 company in the B2B space that's not top of mind for students, or a smaller business that's just not as well known. How do we reach those students who are aligned to our goals without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and competing with everyone else, hoping that students open the email or stop by the booth? But we're also talking about skills-based or skills-first hiring. For anyone involved in SHRM, you know this is very, very top of mind. How can we get insights on candidate skills that, again, aren't based upon GPA or major, but based upon actual performance? And it's not just technical skills like, can someone use Excel or Power BI, though we certainly can assess those things. It's also those core skills that make all the difference: problem solving, communication, attention to detail, coachability. This is experiential recruiting. And it's possible and accessible in the early career space because of micro-internships. Micro-internships let companies leverage the benefits of experiential learning in a way that complements and enhances what they're doing without adding to their workload. So what are micro-internships? As I said, I'm going to share the slides afterwards, so I'm not going to go through all of this in detail. But the way I would think about these at a high level is they're very, very short-term projects that are aligned to those full-time roles at companies. Think tasks that would take a college student 10, 15, 20 hours to get done. Tasks that don't require you to onboard them or share any information or give access to systems. Tasks that allow students to really showcase their skills and allow you to assess if they're the right fit. Micro-internships are also not an HR legal burden. The students are not employees of yours or contractors or interns, and there's no temp to perm fee or conversion or anything else. These are made to be yet another recruiting tool. Or as one of the college students described, and I wish I could come up with a better metaphor, the current campus recruiting process is essentially about jumping right into getting engaged with a summer internship or co-op or apprenticeship, or getting married with that full-time role. Micro-internships are like job dates. And as opposed to talking hypothetically, I'll show some very, very quick examples. Think about if you're hiring for an entry-level data marketing role. On the left, you can see the job description. Pretty straightforward. On the right is some examples of micro-internships that you can offer to help students, again, demonstrate their skills and help you assess and help build those relationships. No, you're not giving them access to your social media account to go do a whole bunch of posts. You can have them draft content or do a competitive analysis. It gives you insights into the skills. It could be a production operation role, something on a shop floor or manufacturing center. Again, you're not going to give them access to a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment where they could chop off their arm, but you could have them develop a training manual. Yeah, maybe you need a new training manual, but even if you don't, more importantly, it helps you assess, does this student understand the various types of machinery we use? Can they communicate their understanding effectively? It could be a role like development. Think IT or programming. Again, you're not giving them access to your core code base, but let's have them do some user experience testing. Even within HR, we see these kinds of projects. Go identify various vendors. Help us review job descriptions. Again, these are all examples of projects that hiring managers often have on their plate anyway, but they more importantly provide you a way to engage and assess and see those skills of a student. This works because the assessment is built right into the process. Every step of the way, you're getting insights that can't really be captured anyone else. When the students apply, you're able to see, are they a self-starter? Do they have attention to detail? Again, things we know make the difference between great hires and people that don't work out. Along the way, as they're completing the project, you're teasing out things like communication and professionalism, and are they coachable? And then when the project is done, you're seeing the deliverable, and you're seeing through the work product, do they have the problem solving, the intellectual curiosity? It's pretty powerful. Now, the question becomes, why are students doing it? It clearly adds a ton of value for employers. Students are doing this because it's how they want to be recruited. In fact, 95% of college students said these real short-term work experience are the best way to be recruited, whether it's early on when they're trying to explore career paths, especially during the first 2 years of college when they're most influenceable and most interested, but it also lets them showcase their skills. It lets you understand, do they have the right skills to thrive in your organization, and helps them make the best decision about what company's the right fit, and do it earlier in the process. And for companies, it fits really throughout the recruiting process, whether it's at the top of funnel, building a pipeline of candidates, or engaging students to build the brand, whether it's deeper in the funnel around assessing skills, or ultimately keeping candidates engaged in building sort of a competitive advantage in converting them. So I'm going to walk you through 4 very specific examples of how companies are using this right now. And then we'll go into, again, the funded program. David, thanks for sharing in the chat. Thanks for sharing in the chat the work you've done through a couple of these funded programs in the past. The first example is about how companies are using it to find ideal candidates that are getting missed. Again, we've all heard about the application avalanche and sort of what AI and one-click job applications are doing. And ironically, even with the volume of resumes so many companies are getting, they often struggle to find those candidates that align. This is a medical device company that was having that challenge. They were looking for mechanical engineering students who realized we don't necessarily want to be in the lab upon graduation. In addition, they had some goals around student athletes and the specific geographies where this company was based. So one of the things they did was they created business development micro-internships very targeted to engage those students. Again, the mechanical engineers and the student athletes. And they used it, one, to drive interest, help that mechanical engineering student realize that there's a such thing as a sales engineer that's within business development. Introduce that role to students that may not have been considering it, but also to target students who had ties to Memphis and Austin and Andover, places where they had corporate offices and needed people. They posted a project where essentially students were doing research on prospects, again, large hospital systems and doctor practices that were using medical devices, putting together those presentations as a way to both, again, introduce the role to the student, but also for the sales team to see the student's skills before the interview. What they were able to do was nothing short of incredible. They reached students from over 1,000 different schools, selected from almost 90. They had students doing projects that were just incredible. We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that 50% of college grads leave their first job within the first year in business development. That number is much higher, typically 70 or 80%. In this case, of the students who are ultimately hired for the full-time roles, 100% of them are still at the company over a year and a half later, including one student who got an Employee of the Year award. One of the other things I like about this is the hiring managers loved it. Instead of just looking at a resume and notes from a phone screen or interview, the HR team was able to go to the hiring manager and say, here's resumes for candidates. In addition to, here's the one-page work sample tied to business development. Hiring managers thought it was the greatest thing. Not only did it help them get more insights on the students before the interview, but in the interview, they used that work product sort of as a catalyst for discussion. So the second example is about sourcing and selection. This company is interesting because it is a well-known fitness chain that was hiring for roles outside of the gyms. They would be on campus, and again, students would know the name and they would think the only roles available were in, again, being a trainer or being at the front desk at one of their facilities. This organization was trying to say, how can we get more students interested in roles in HR, finance, marketing at the corporate level. They were also having challenges working through the applicant volume. Again, that the application avalanche, because so many of those applicants, again, were applying to be trainers who were submitting roles for marketing or sales. So one of the things this organization did is they identified always on tasks. And in fact, they had one of those within HR itself. Specifically, the HR team was looking to hire, and they had this task where they were looking to improve new hire onboarding. What are some of the best practices out there? How can we do better? They picked a number of students to do it, one of which was a 3.9 GPA, who was an HR major from a fancy school. Another had a lower GPA, wasn't an HR major, but there was something that sort of stood out. They gave both of the students the project. I'm sure you can guess where I'm going with this story. The example on the top was the student who had the great GPA. You can see from the work product she submitted, it was good. There was good data in there, but it didn't really sort of present well. And there were some typos in there and other errors. The student who they were a little bit more on the fence with was the bottom example. It was incredible. You can tell, again, from 10 seconds of looking at it, which student is probably the one you want to spend more time with. Fast forward, they wound up offering the student at the bottom a summer internship and then a full-time role. And as the hiring manager and HR team said, we probably wouldn't have even given her an interview if we didn't find her this way. The third example is about deepening campus relationships. This was a healthcare organization that had spent tons and tons of time and money building relationships on campus, both for allied health roles, but also those beyond healthcare. Highly competitive space, very, very difficult to hire. And they were finding that they were continuing to spend, but were trying to build that competitive advantage versus the other hospital systems. So one of the things they did was, again, offer micro-internships and design the projects very specifically to differentiate HCA from other hospital systems, highlighting the importance of patient care, highlighting employee relationships. What they were also able to do is build a pipeline of candidates that when this organization was setting foot I think this example is Florida A&M, they already had candidates who were engaged and excited, not just because of what their major was or a one-click application, but candidates who took time to answer the questions and work on the projects. And obviously, they also had insights into those candidate skills before they set foot on campus. And the last example is about data. As we talked about, early career hiring is under attack. And with the larger economic climate, we constantly need to demonstrate the value and importance of what we're doing and the cost effectiveness. This was a global Fortune 500 company that was having that challenge. And in fact, the team there was trying to scale up its early career program, even though, again, it was relatively small in the past. They then used micro-internships both to target specific students, but also to demonstrate the impact, be able to show to the C-suite or the HR leaders the fact that they were able to reach students with ties to some of the hard-to-fill geographies. They were able to show the effective cost per hire and cost per school they were spending. I think it was something like $73 compared to north of $1,000 on average. They were able to show the impact tied to other strategic goals, one of which was gender equity within the organization, and actually have that impact. The C-suite loved it, and it really positioned the campus recruiting team to continue to have success within that organization, not only protecting its budget and team, but actually getting approval from the CFO to scale up. It works for employers because it's easy and accessible. It's a single platform where employers can reach students from over 5,000 post-secondary institutions. We like the fact that it's equitable. So while we are not a formal DEI or diversity platform, we welcome everyone. I'm very proud of the fact that over 80% of the students who are actually selected come from populations underrepresented in the workforce. And that includes folks who are first gen, Pell eligible, veterans, adult learners. Again, it creates that equitable access. We also love the fact that students do a great job on this. I think it's north of 97% success rate. And when they take a full-time role, they don't leave. And this is all done cost effectively. we have data showing cost per hire is typically 40 to 80% less than the NACE average. I know that's a big range, but the average campus recruiting spend is also pretty big. But even if you're at the low end, that's pretty cost effective. And again, they stay. So let me talk real quickly on how you can leverage some of the funded programs to see this firsthand without having to write a check. Through the generous support of a number of organizations, whether it's foundations like the Frederick DeLuca Foundation or the Sherm Foundation, or specific schools like Bucknell or George Washington, or corporate sponsors like IBM, or state programs like the state of Indiana or the state of Kansas, you're able to try this for free to work with students. What this means is you can post these micro-internships and have access to all of the data without any cost. And to be clear, the students are still paid for their work, and that's vital. That's vital, not just because of a fairness perspective, but it's also vital because it improves your talent pipeline. It makes sure that you're not filtering out individuals who can't afford to do unpaid simulations, or individuals who aren't 100% positive going into it. They want to work at your company. They're curious, they're interested, but they're not necessarily willing to spend 10 or 15 hours doing an unpaid simulation. By paying the students for their work, you're ensuring that you're getting the best talent pipeline. And again, that cost is covered through these grants. And what you get is, in addition to the micro-internships, you're getting access to all of the tools I showed you. The ability to see all of the data, the ability to target specific students, the ability to really complement your campus recruiting efforts. So what now? Well, whether your campus recruiting is in full swing and you're in the middle of career fairs and super days and info sessions or even interviews, or whether things are a little bit further out, you're not sure what your hiring needs are going to be next year, you're not sure how many interns or full-time hires, or you're waiting for hiring managers who we know are going to show up in April or May with their needs, you can leverage this right now. Again, whether it's before you visit campus, you can use these projects to engage the students. You can use that to keep those students you're meeting warm after those campus visits. Maybe you met some students and you want insights on their skills. Perfect opportunity. And again, if you can't be on campus this year, what a great way to reach and engage. And as I said before, even if you're not sure what your needs are, this is an incredible, easy way to build a pipeline of engaged, interested candidates for when you are ready. With that, I'll see if there's any questions. Feel free to use the chat. How can my organization build more awareness amongst the colleges who participate? Great question, David. Let the colleges know. So, and first of all, to be very clear, we have an entire team that partners with colleges and universities. 100% of what they do is work with the schools like Bucknell, like George Washington, like Nova, to help them bring micro-internships to more and more employers and help those employers understand how it complements what they're already doing with those schools or should be doing. That said, David, when you have conversations with the schools, when you're talking with those schools about the relationships and about what they're doing or you're doing with them, certainly let them know. We, again, are an open platform, which is why we have students from over 5,000 colleges and universities. And I'm proud of the fact that we have formal partnerships with over 1,000 of those colleges. But there's always opportunities to do more. And sometimes the schools aren't thinking about it because they're busy also, and they're feeling a lot of the same pains campus recruiting teams are. Right now, a lot of the schools are thinking about, do we have enough employers at the career fair, students showing up to the career fair? How can we keep employers happy around certain student populations that they're trying to reach? Maybe it's a second-year students or accounting majors or students with certain ties. Letting them know that you want to use micro-internships to help them do that is certainly a good thing. And David, again, if there's specific schools you have in mind, we're happy to help collaborate with you on how to address that. Any other questions from the audience? I guess I did that good of a job. You're welcome, David. So as I said, we'll be sharing the recording. We'll be sharing sort of the slides. But my ask of you, my suggestion to you is use the link at the bottom Again, I'll let me copy it and paste it in the chat. Use the link or use the QR code. And what I would always suggest, send us a job description you have for an entry-level role or a summer internship. Whether it's a link or PDF or even just a couple of bullet points, send it to us. What we'll do is we have an entire team that all they do is craft micro-internships, craft these experiences aligned to those full-time roles. And they're crafted in the way that, again, you don't need to share info. You don't need to share data or access. The projects are ones that students will find interesting. They're a great way to showcase your company, but also will give you those insights on the skills. Just use the link, whether it's, again, the QR code of the link, and put in your job description. We'll get back to you with an idea or two. And one of the things I always like to put out there is please challenge us. Give us that you think there is no way a micro internship could align. Again, HCA was a great example. You're hiring nurses. We're not going to give a micro internship where a student is in front of a patient or drawing blood. Of course not. But we crafted some really interesting projects that both assess the technical healthcare skills, but also allowed HCA to see those core skills and showcase who they were to potential nurses there. So please, please, please challenge us. And if it is something we can't do, we will let you know. My guess is we've been doing this a long time. We're pretty good at it. So again, please use the link or QR code. We want to be challenged. We want to see what you have and try to help. And with the foundation funding that's available from so many different organizations, it is a perfect time. Maybe you're trying to figure out how AI fits into your organization. Perfect opportunity. Maybe you have that difficult marketing role to fill, or you need someone who literally speaks Portuguese and is highly fluent in Power BI and can code in Python. We had that request and found the students. Again, happy to help however we can. So if there's no other questions, thank you so much for your time. This concludes the webinar, and happy Friday Eve to everyone.